Welcome back to another one of my Fox body videos. This video will focus on my former 1984 Mercury Capri RS Turbo. Well, let's take a step back 1 year to 1983 when the RS Turbo with EFI was introduced. They only produced 381 models. 1983 marked the introduction of the bubble-back hatchback and the non-intercooled 2.3 four-cylinder turbocharged with EFI. Interestingly, this wasn't the first time that the 2.3T appeared in a Fox body. It debuted in the 79 model year Mustang and Capri, but with a draw-through design using a carburetor. However, the carb 2.3T option was dropped after a few years for a variety of reasons, including drivability. Incidentally, I did own a 79 Capri RS Turbo, although mine was unfortunately a parts car as it was wrecked by a previous owner. Non-intercooled 2.3T EFI engine, transmission, rear end, suspension, and exhaust in the Capri RS Turbo was the same as what came in the 83 and 84 Mustang GT Turbo. The 2.3T EFI also debuted in the 1983 Thunderbird Turbo Coupe and continued through 1986. Note that the non-intercooled 2.3T was very similar to the power plant used in the 84 to 86 Mustang SVO and the later 87-88 Turbo Coupe. Back to the 84 RS Turbo. Most notable is that it came in only one color, which was dark charcoal metallic, paint code 9W. They also used a silver metallic paint code 1E on the lower rockers with the RS orange and red stripe package. The tricolor treatment was not unique to the Turbo and was also found on the Capri RS with the 5.0 V8. The turbocharged and non-intercooled 2.3 was rated at 145 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque at a maximum of 10 pounds of boost, which actually lights up a nifty little green boost light on the dash. The T5 was the only transmission available, and the standard rear end was a 7.5 inch with a 345:1 ratio and limited slip differential. Here is the Mercury Capri model breakdown for 1984. Back to my car. I picked up this 84 Capri RS Turbo in April of 2007, purchasing it from a friend of mine who was also a participant on the Four-Eyed Pride forum. Since it was a survivor and basically solid, my plan was to keep it pretty much stock and just make it a nice driver. The backstory of this car was that the original owner only used it for mainly short trips around town, putting under 50,000 miles on the clock. So once I took ownership, I stashed the car into storage until I got some time to work on it. When I first purchased the car, it ran okay, but it smoked out the tailpipe like a pig. It badly needed new valve seals, which is a common problem on 2.3 engines as they age. So one of the first projects was to replace all the valve seals using my homemade yet highly sophisticated HLA compression tool. After the seals were replaced, the engine smoke was basically gone. Next, I checked the timing, reset the base idle, and adjusted the TPS. After all this work, the car actually ran really nice. Onward to the bodywork and prep. First up was to strip all the major body moldings, remove the tape stripes, emblems, and then start sanding and sanding and sanding. On the hood and driver's side, I decided to use chemical paint stripper because whatever was on the car paint-wise was soft and gumming up the sandpaper. Using chemical stripper is a really crappy job, but it was definitely easier than sanding at this point. Here's the hood progress. Next up was removal of the rear bumper cover, and then started the process of fixing some small dings in the rear quarter and front fender. Here are more progress shots of the ongoing bodywork. The passenger side was mainly complete of all the major work except for final sanding. Back on the driver's side, I chemically stripped both the front fender and the rear quarter and applied a coat of primer. Next item I needed to do was to sand down the driver's door, then fix all the dings on this side. Here are some additional shots of the panel smoothing using typical plastic body filler. By November of 2007, I was starting to make more progress on the bodywork. The right side was basically done. All it needed was the final putty and wet sanding. The front bumper cover was being wet sanded, but still more to do here. The left side was basically done, also needing final putty and wet sanding. Finally, the roof was getting closer. It needed a good wet sanding. Once all the filler work is completed, I generally use this reddish final putty to take care of any minor surface imperfections and scratches left from the bodywork. It goes on over all the areas, then gets wet sanded with 220 grit. Most of this ends up on the floor of the garage, as seen in this picture. At this point, it was January 2008. After all the body work, including wet sanding, I had a mess in the garage, so I backed the car out and hosed out all the crap. Here are a few pictures while the Capri was outside. Next up was to get the rear bumper de-striped, sanded, filled, and primered. Stripe removal on the bumper covers suck. You can't just grind it off, and the residue needs to be removed with something like Glue Gun. After all the prep work, the bumper cover was ready for paint. Here it is loosely hung back on the car. Next up, painting the quarter trim and door trim satin black. Here are a few photos of the passenger side work. In August of 2008, I finally got the car in the garage, fully wet sanded and the final coat of primer, and got everything masked off. In these pictures, a single coat of gray sealer had been applied over the primer, and the silver paint is already sprayed on the bottom of the car and masked off. Here, 3 coats of the base coat of dark charcoal metallic is finally on. Next were 2 heavy applications of urethane clear coat to add both UV protection and gloss. This was actually my first time shooting base coat clear coat urethane, and what I found out was that the clear coat wasn't reduced adequately, so I ended up with a bit more orange peel than desired. So the next step with this project was the cut and buff stage. Cutting refers to several steps of wet sanding with 1,000, 1,500, and finally 2,000 grits. This makes the clear coat appear dull until it's buffed. Here are a few photos of the finished cut and buff process on the roof of the car. This has been wet sanded and then buffed with rubbing compound and glazing compound. The paint has a really nice shine and a really good reflection. And a few more photos, both inside the garage as well as outside. Side body moldings. I always hated this part of a refurb repaint project. In the past, I usually spent hours with lacquer thinner, rags, and a few single edge razor blades scraping off the old double-sided tape. But this time I tried something different, and it did save a bunch of time. Here's the way the back side of the molding looked after removal from the car. The real key is the stripping wheel, which makes quick work of getting rid of the residue tape and the glue from the metal strips. Once the molding is fully cleaned, simply apply 3M automotive double-sided tape and it's ready for reattachment to the car. Here are a handful of pictures of the car after final cleanup. Note that the wide side moldings have been reapplied to the car at this point. Something that also needed to be addressed in this car were the seats, which were totally trashed. Unfortunately, the seat material that was used on this era of Mustangs and Capris really didn't hold up, especially when subject to constant sun exposure. So rather than try to reupholster these, I purchased and installed a full set of used seats from an 84 SVO. I think this made a great upgrade to the interior. In April 2010, I added the graphics and lower stripes to the 84 RST. The RS Turbo decals are available online from Graphic Express. However, I wasn't able to find anyone that sold the original orange and red lower stripes, so I cheated and bought these 2 rolls at a local graphics supplier. I think the results turned out pretty good. The last item that I wanted to address on this car was the exhaust. When I bought the car, it still had the original exhaust, including the iconic twin tip. However, the entire system was rotted, so after I removed the original exhaust system, I cut what was left of the twin tip and stored it away. When I installed a new exhaust system, I used a standard 5.0 LX tailpipe as seen in this picture. So I cleaned up the original dual tip and welded it onto a shortened LX tailpipe. Here is what I ended up with. These are the final set of pictures of the finished RS Turbo project. I basically acted as the caretaker of this fairly unique and limited production Capri. In July 2013, another project came up for sale, which was an 86 white SVO that was bought in pieces, and I decided to pass the torch on my 84 RS Turbo. I sold it back to my friend in New Jersey, where he put some additional time into the mechanics of the car to get it running and driving 100%. Here are a few pictures from the car when it was picked up. This car has since traded hands to another enthusiast of the Capri RS Turbo, and I'm hopeful that he will fully enjoy the car now that it's restored and road ready. I hope you enjoyed the journey. Thanks for following along. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for future Fox Body videos.